Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
Today we have a truly special episode. We're joined by not one, but two legends in the custom motorcycle world. Dave Perewitz, the godfather of American chopper culture, and his daughter, Jody, a land speed record holder, builder, and one of the most respected women in the motorcycle world. We'll dive into the Perewitz legacy, from Dave's early days shaping the custom scene to Jody's boundary-breaking rides and speed records. Together they share stories from the shop, the track, and the road, giving us a rare look at what it means to build a family brand that's been a pillar of motorcycling for over 50 years. Let's roll into an unforgettable conversation with Dave and Jody Perewitz.
Well, it's kind of like the master plan, you know, for Jody to be able to, stand on her own without me, which is, happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm Jody Perewitz's dad. She isn't Dave Perewitz's daughter. So,
One Gang Worldwide podcast, brought to you by Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping. Since 1978, Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping has been a trusted name in transporting motorcycles safely across the country. With custom designed pallets and air ride trailers, your bike is secure and protected every step of the way. By choosing Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping, you're supporting a dedicated small business that prioritizes quality and customer satisfaction. Ship with a peace of mind, knowing your motorcycle is in expert hands. Visit keyboardmotorcycleshipping.com for more information. Now, let's dive into today's episode. What's up, One Gang? Welcome to the show. We got a special one here today. For me personally, my hero growing up, a few towns over, Dave Perewitz, and his amazing daughter, Jody, who's, rocking it right now in the industry. So, guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on board.
Thank you, Fox.
glad to be here.
We can't forget to welcome Pickle the dog, too.
She loves to be a part of it.
That's great. All right, so Dave, let's go way back. Where did you grow up in Massachusetts? What kind of kid were you, and what were your interests like before motorcycles?
Well, I grew up in Brockton, Massachusetts, which, you guys know where Brockton is.
Yeah.
And it was a lot different city back then. I went to parochial school until the 11th grade. And then I went to Brockton High School. And I also had an interest in cars. I got my first car when I was about 14.
Nice.
And just had it out in the backyard, took it apart, put it back together. And I used to walk down to the main street and just watch all the, it was called Cruising the Drag back then.
Nice.
All the guys with all the cool cars would ride up and down Main Street. And I'd get down there and check them all out. And then when I got my license, the guys that had cool cars. And so I moved right into the hot rod scene.
Nice.
And then only a couple of years later, all my friends that had hot rod cars switched to hot rod bikes. So I switched right along with them.
Dave, what was that car that you got? What was the car that you got when you were 14?
It was a 53 Plymouth.
Sweet.
Yeah, my father got it at the local gas station. He paid $10 for it.
Damn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of work did you end up doing to it? Did you chop it all up?
Oh, I did some body work, and then I, put a glass pack muffler on it.
Nice.
Sweet.
Pull the seats out and got some Volt bucket seats and put them in it, and I just played with it,
So was that your
got
first
it running.
ride?
No, that was actually my first car was a 56 Corvette.
Nice.
It was supposed to be me and my mother were going to share it, but my mother wasn't too hep on driving a standard shift Corvette.
I can't see Nana
So I had
driving.
that for,
That's fine.
yeah. So I had that when I was in high school. And then shortly after, I bought a really nice 55 Chevy. And so me and my mother shared the 55. And then I kind of went on from there. I had lots of cars. I had a 62 Nova, a race car.
Beautiful.
Had a 327 with dual quads and a Pontiac rear end, and I did the whole car from the ground up. Me and a couple of my older friends rented a garage behind a house, so that was our hangout. And so we used to work on cars down there, and it was a cool spot.
That's awesome. Do you remember your first introduction to motorcycles? How you said you transitioned from the hot rod scene to the motorcycle scene. Take us a little bit into that transition. How did that come about?
Well, my friend had a 60 Sportster Stroker, and back then it had K wheels. That was a Stroker, and then he went off to Vietnam, and he left the bike in our garage. So I talked to him whenever I could, and so I asked him if I could ride the bike, and he said, yeah, sure. So I rode that just for a very, very short time, and then I bought my first bike, which was a 64 Sportster. I can remember distinctly, I paid $800 for it. Nice bike. And actually, I bought it from an older guy that sold used bikes in one of the local towns. And right now, I'm good friends with his son and his grandson.
Wow.
Cool.
So yeah, that's quite a
That's
coincidence.
crazy, man. So
Yeah.
what was your first bike that you learned on?
Well, basically, my friend, when I was younger than that, he had a 305, but I learned to ride on that scrambler. But more so, just that first Sportster. That was it. So I did it. Actually, I did my first paint job. Now I used to hang around my friend's body shop after school, and him and his dad owned a body shop, and they always had cool cars there. And so I used to watch him paint. And right when I got out of high school, my first job was I was a line mechanic at the local Chevy dealership. So when I was at the Chevy dealership, I managed to get a spray gun and decided to paint my first bike. So 5x10 lawnmower shed into my first spray booth. It had a little
Nice
kitchen fan, the one that you pull the chain to open. Had one of those in the wall, and I had a little electric heater. And so I did my first paint job in there. And so I took my bike to Laconia, and that was in 69 was the first year I rode to Laconia. That was when he had roadside camping, and everybody just pulled over on the side of the road, and that was your camp.
Right. The good old days of New Hampshire.
Yeah, it was miles and miles and miles of just guys camping on the side of the road.
Right.
And so then the following year, I redid the bike again, and I was riding home from Laconia. And I look in my mirror, and I see this chopper coming up behind me. It's way behind me, and I'm looking at it, and this guy is all laid back. And so he caught up with me, and I rode next to him for a few minutes, and this guy was right out of California. Big, long chopper, springer, fancy paint job, the whole deal, and then he just boogied on. And when I saw that bike, I said, that's going to be me next year. So as soon as the season ended, we went over to my friend's shop. We started cutting and chopping. I made that into a rigid frame. I welded a hardtail on the back. cut the neck off, stretched the neck 12 inches, 40
Damn.
degrees of rake,
Damn.
19 over springer, and did my first metal flake job. And, did ribbons on gold metal flake, and rode that bike to Laconia that year.
Man.
And that was my first real chopper.
That is
Dave,
badass.
Hey, One Gang, we're excited to announce our first giveaway.
We're teaming up with Leather Up to get you free gear.
One lucky listener gets a $150 gift card and a featured spot on the podcast.
Registration starts May 16th and ends June 1st at midnight, so stay tuned. Were you a natural painter? Did it come naturally, or did you have to kind of learn the ropes?
No, I did pretty good. The problem is back then there was no books, there was no internet, there was you just had to learn on your own, and hopefully somebody that was older, that was a body man and a painter, could give you some advice, which they did. I talked to a few local guys that gave me some tips, and
Cool.
and I just kept evolving, and back then a quart of paint was $7.
Wow.
And that same quart of paint now is probably $200. But I still have my paint book from 1971 and
cool.
72. And for a 3-piece paint job, Sportster tank and 2 fenders, one color, was $35.
Wow.
If it was a big job, paint the frame, tank, and 2 fenders, that was $175. So, give you an idea
Too
how
bad
far
the
it's
prices
come.
still aren't the same, man.
Yeah.
It's expensive
Yeah,
now.
I'll
with that. Hey, so Dave, listen, I grew up a few towns over from you guys, as I mentioned in the beginning. I remember I had to go into my kid pictures of trying to find out some pictures on my wall, and I remember which one I had. I had that 64 Sportster you built. I think it was the Sting, the long stretch one. I had that bike. That was one of the first bikes that was on my wall that I had. So what I wanted to ask was, basically, you started in basically a lawnmower shed, if you really want to call the truth. Take us a little bit into those younger, scrappy days of how you built the business, how you chased the business. How did, this name start from that point on? Like, take us into the early days before anybody knew who you were.
Well, I had, I never ever time thought that I was going to be in the motorcycle business for the rest of my life. That thought never crossed my mind. It was just day by day. And, I did auto repair in my father's driveway to make money for 1-car garage. And I set it all up to, I built a little spray booth on one end. And so I started, the kind of word got around that I was painting bikes. So, a lot of the local guys would come in and, I do paint jobs for them. And then, I saw, of course, we were big fans of all the motorcycle magazines. I mean, on the first of the month when the magazines came out, we were at the magazine store to get all the magazines. And, of course, Alan Ness was the biggest name in the magazines back then. And so I started ordering parts from him. I'd call him and order some parts. And in 1974, me and three of my friends looking at the current magazine, and it was Custom Chopper was the magazine. And we're saying, well, geez, our bikes are as good as these bikes. And so it had a phone number in the front of the magazine. The editor's name was Larry Comferman. And, of course, California. So I called the number and he answered. What are the chances of that happening now, right? Yeah. So I said, yeah, I told him who I was. I said, my name is Dave Perewitz, and I live out here south of Boston. And, me and my friends built some nice bikes, and I think that they should be in your magazine. And he said, well, what makes you think that they're good enough? So I kind of gave him a description, and I talked to him for probably 20 minutes, right? And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Are you from Boston?" And I told him, we're like 20 miles from Boston. He says, well, how about if I fly out there next week and shoot your bikes? I'm like,
No way.
okay,
Nice.
great. 2 weeks later, he showed up. I went and picked him up at the airport. He shot our bikes, and my first magazine, my first bike in a magazine was 1974, and it was a Sportster, a rigid frame Sportster that I built, and then later that year, actually that was in 72, 73. In 74, there was a bike show in Boston, and there wasn't much in the line of shows back then. There was car shows with a few bikes sprinkled around. Well, this was going to be a big bike show at the convention center, and it was the talk of the town.
Right.
And it was advertised in the Sunday paper every week. First place, best bike gets a brand new Sportster.
Wow.
1974 Sportster. So everybody was pumped up. We worked.
Sure.
My God, I worked for a solid week just detailing my bike and
That's funny.
and getting it ready. So setup was Friday morning, and the show opened Friday night. We got there, we set up. Everybody's in there, and I'm meeting guys from North Shore and everything. Then we're all got our bikes in there.
How was the scene back then?
It was
The Boston scene.
It was very much more outlawish.
Oh, okay.
There was a lot of club stuff going on. But it was like the true biker lifestyle that you saw from back then. So the next morning, on Saturday morning, the morning paper came out, and there's a big ad for the show, and it says, best bike wins a gold watch. And so by the time everybody got in there, it was like big talk. Hey, what the hell? This guy's going to screw us?
So no longer the bike. Now it's the watch.
No longer the bike.
Right.
So me and a couple of the other guys, we went to the promoter. And he said, oh, no, that was just a come on. No, I'm only giving a gold watch. And so we told him, hey, listen, you advertised a new bike. And so we told him. And now, mind you, the show was packed. On Friday night, there was a line going down the street and around the corner waiting to get in. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
So we told him, if this isn't settled by 5 o'clock, we're covering up all the bikes.
Nice. Smart.
And so we went back and forth, and he finally agreed to give away the Sportster.
Good.
That's cool.
And I won it.
You won, of course. That's funny.
Yeah.
So that was
And
the
I won
first new bike in the collection?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that was the first bike.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal, that show.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year in 1975, I went to Daytona. Now, meanwhile, I'm working 12 hours a day, every day.
Of course.
I never worked a 40-hour week in my whole life. And so we're getting ready to go to Daytona. Now, I go to Daytona, and I end up meeting Joe Alphabet. You know who he was?
No.
Okay. You ever hear Alphabet's exhaust?
That's Joe Alphabet.
Okay, Joe Alphabet was, he was like one of the very first guys to come out with a 2-to-1 cool exhaust.
In it.
And so I got to meet him and became somewhat friends with him during that week. He had a booth and I was kind of hanging. And he says, well, listen, if you want to go, I know Yosemite Sam was running the show. He says, I can call him. So I said, oh, okay. So we geared up, me and my friend, and we took our girlfriends. We put the 2 bikes in my van and started driving to Detroit. It was April 4th, and we hit an unbelievable blizzard. I mean, it was bad. You couldn't even, all the exits were all snowed in. You couldn't even get off the thruway. We stopped at a rest stop and went inside, and there was, the whole men's room was filled with people sleeping on the floor. That's how bad it was. So we just kept going, and we got to Detroit, and that was, I met Alan Ness there. We had talked on the phone for a couple of years, but it was the first time I actually met him. I met Donnie Smith there, and I met Ed Kerr there. Do you know who those guys are?
Oh, yeah, the original Hamsters, man, of course.
Right, original Hamsters. We all met there in Detroit. And so the show was an unbelievable show. I won Best Paint at the show. And so I invited Alan to Laconia. And he said, well, if I ship my bike out, can you take care of it? I said, yeah, no problem. So Alan shipped his bike out, and, I took care of his bike. He flew out, and we drove up to Laconia in my van with the bikes inside. And that was my first meeting with tequila. Because those guys in California are all
California
big
tequila drinkers.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Right. We never drank tequila. So it was quite a ride up there.
That's funny.
What's up, One Gang? I used to think that if I spent big money on riding gear with a logo on the back, I was getting top quality. I gave Leather Up a shot. I wasn't sure at first, could I really get quality gear without spending a fortune? But after putting tens of thousands of miles on their jackets and vests, I had my answer. No busted zippers, no loose stitching, just solid, well-made gear that lasts. Leather Up carries trusted brands like Milwaukee Leather, Hot Leathers, and more, with gear for every rider and every budget. Plus, their customer service actually cares and picks up the phone, something rare these days. So do yourself a favor, check out leatherup.com. Whether you need jackets, vests, chaps, boots, helmets, or luggage, they've got you covered. And because you're part of the One Gang Worldwide family, use code CW20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Stop overpaying, gear up with Leather Up, and see the difference yourself.
So anyways, we had a great time that weekend. And on Sunday, Alan said, hey, I know a bunch of guys in Detroit. You want to go to Detroit for a few days? I said, sure. So we put both bikes in my van and we drove to Detroit. And we stayed at Yosemite Sam's house. You know who Yosemite Sam is? Okay, we stayed at Sam's house. We rode every day with Ron Finch, Tony Carlini, Sam and Jim. We stayed there a week and had a great time, met all kinds of new people. And one thing Alan told me, he said, and Alan Ness was truly my mentor. He told me, he said, when you meet people on their own level, it's a whole lot different. And very, very true, But anyway, so then it just, kind of went on from there.
Gotcha.
Wow. So
gotcha. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
It might be hard to answer, but was there a particular bike, like the 74 magazine feature, your first one, or a paint job that got you noticed and turned some heads and made you think we really could be onto something here?
Um, you know, there was a lot of them back then.
In it.
The magazine industry was, totally political, just like everything. And
Yeah.
shortly after that, I met Bob Clark. Do you know who Bob is?
No.
Bob was the editor of Street Chopper and Hot Bike for like 25 years. And I also met Keith Ball, who was the editor of Easy Rider. And those guys became my friends. So I had lots and lots of magazine coverage.
Man.
And, as the magazine coverage increased, but, it was probably, I started in 1970, 71. It probably wasn't until the early to mid 90s, I'd say, that I really got a lot of momentum. In the late 80s through the 90s, we were doing 3 to 5 complete paint jobs a week.
Man.
It was crazy. But of course,
So you're talking about both cars and bikes, or just bikes?
No, just bikes.
Just bikes.
No, just
Okay.
bikes. Yeah. So, there was, like how you have the, the magazines, those companies that put them on plaques.
Yep.
And you laminate them on plaques.
Laminate them, yep, so that you can hang them, yep.
Yeah. Well, so I started collecting those, and then I had to stop and just do covers. And I have over 150 magazine covers, just covers.
Wow.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
I've got them in my showroom. Of course, I didn't have room for all of them, but they start in 1975, just covers, and they go all the way around the room pretty much year by year up to date.
Gotcha.
So take us into the early days of traveling the builder circuit before social media changed the game. Like bands that had to hit the road to be heard. Was it the same for bike builders back then?
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of shows, mostly in the New England, New York area. You'd throw, I'd put 2 bikes in my van, because all the stuff we were building was skinny bikes.
Right. Easy
And,
to travel, yep.
Yeah, you could go to a show, and I think they'd give you like 10 cents a mile one way, so that paid for a little bit of gas. And then we could never afford to have a room all to ourselves, so you'd always end up sharing a
crashing
hotel
with
room
everybody, yep.
Yeah. And it got to be, it's funny, I run into guys today that tell me, yeah, I had a bike in the show and I competed against you in Providence in 1979 or something, So,
That's
that
cool.
was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the Rat's Hole show in Florida, which I won the Rat's Hole show in 74. And with the same bike that I took to Detroit. And then I think I won the Rat's Hole show almost every year after that for a lot of years.
Dave, was
And,
Detroit a mecca at that time in the early to mid 70s for like both getting the West Coast builders and the East Coast builders together? Was that like one of the major places that you had to be at on a yearly basis?
No, not at all.
No?
No, Detroit had its own style. They didn't share it with anybody,
Oh, no shit.
basically.
What?
Yeah, and that show was only 2 years. That one we went to was the first year, and it ended up, they had it a second year, which we didn't go the second year, and it was, there was some big money behind it that kind of went away, I guess.
Gotcha.
But, there was a guy that actually the show that the first Detroit show was won by a guy named Mel Young, and it was a Yosemite Sam built bike. Total badass custom. And so we went back, Alan and I went back to Chicago. When Mel Young was from Chicago, we went and did a show. He invited us to a show probably in 79 in Chicago. So him and I went out there, and we had like kind of the featured bikes. And so Mel Young, he owned a chrome shop. And so we go over to his chrome shop, and we go in his office, and he's got this big, huge fish tank full of piranha.
Huh.
So he's showing us that. Then he opens up, he's got a big safe. He opens up his safe, and he's got machine guns and all kinds of crazy shit.
Right.
Well, the following year,
Jeez.
Mel disappeared, and they found him dead in the trunk of his car at the airport.
Whoa.
Damn.
So needless to say, what he was probably into.
Yeah, he was doing some bad
Jeez.
people, man. Wow.
Dad, tell him about. So you just told me when we were going to the Donnie Smith show a couple weekends ago that the show was like right around now, wasn't it? The Detroit show.
Oh yeah, it was like I say, it was April 4th and April 5th, and
So good
yeah,
with
no, I
dates
said,
and names.
huh?
I said you're so good with dates and names, but you don't remember where you put a piece of paper down 10 minutes ago.
Right, I lose my coffee about 10 times a day in the shop. Where's my coffee?
That's funny.
No, I was saying, we were in Minnesota last weekend for Donnie Smith's birthday,
That was cool.
and when we were there, Donnie and I had been friends for 50 years.
Man.
50 years. Wow.
From that show in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. How many people are going to be able to say that they've had the same friend for 50 years?
Right.
That's a long time.
Insanely long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Detroit
Yeah.
show was 50 years ago, like right around now. Would you say it was April 6th?
Gosh.
Yeah, April 4th, 5th, and 6th. Yeah,
That's
I have the
wild.
poster. Actually, there's a really cool poster, and I have it framed hanging up in my house.
That's cool.
From the
That's
show.
cool.
That is
From the
so
show.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going into what you're just talking about, like, and what Jody mentioned as far as having friends for 50 years, it's absolutely amazing to me that, like, how from the outside, from a fan, I'm talking strictly from a fan point of view, to see like guys like yourself and Arlen jumping in a van, throwing some bikes in the back, heading cross country to all these shows, hanging, get a chance to get to know each other, never really realizing what kind of dent you guys were going to put into this industry now to this day. And like with Donnie and, all this crew that you guys just rode, and you guys just partied, you were a couple of young guys just driving around, man, having motorcycles, having fun, drinking tequila, and just enjoying being young at the time. And now you peel the layer back and like it was 78. You guys formed the Hamsters USA?
The Hamsters, yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
you're talking about yourself, Arlen Ness, Donnie Smith, Ed Kerr, Barry Cooney, Steve Ellington, Jimmy Leahy. I mean, like, take everybody into that, like, when you guys all sat together, bullshit and drinking beer, whatever you were doing, how this whole Hamster USA came about.
Well, we were in Daytona, and in 1978, and at that time we were all staying at a place called the King's Inn, great place, and we would be out on our bikes all day, every day, and then we'd come back to the room, maybe get something to eat, and then we'd go back out again, hit the bars.
Yep.
And so one day we go back to the room for dinner, and my wife and Jimmy Leahy, who we were all sharing a room, they fell asleep, and so we get to go. We're ready to go, and I said, "Hey, we'll let them sleep, right?" So we take off and go out and do our thing. We come rolling back in at 2 a.m, and everybody's pretty hammered,
Right.
and Jimmy and Susan are outside, and he's got paper plates on all of our doors, on my door, on Alan's door, on Cooney's door, and on Ed's door. And it's got a little picture of a hamster, and it says, East Coast President, boogie till you puke, and on each door. And so we all had a big laugh over it, and we joked about it the next few days. And then Donnie Smith got a hold of Dave Bell, who was an artist for a lot of the magazines, and he drew up our first hamster T-shirt. So we all went to Sturgis, and we had our first official hamster ride.
That's crazy.
Down through Spearfish Canyon, and that was like the beginning.
That's how it started.
But it was all just a joke,
Boogie till you puke.
And it escalated from then on.
When did you guys start deciding that you guys were going to start kind of, because it's probably one of the most underrated, really, groups there is out there as far as how much you guys give back. Not many people outside this industry understand what the hamsters do for people. When did you guys start to decide that you were going to start raising money, giving to charities, and helping others?
Well, actually, it was very slow. The hamsters were very slow getting off the ground, per se. In the mid 80s, we were staying at a place called the Bell in Sturgis, and we were basically giving away T-shirts in the parking lot.
Right.
If you want to be a hamster, you could come and buy a T-shirt. And then we decided, we said, we're gonna, we should have a luncheon, a cookout or something. And as we're saying this, I saw a catering truck driving down the street. So I ran down after him, and when he stopped at the light, I said, "Hey, you interested in catering a cookout for us?" And he said, "Sure." So that guy catered our cookout for probably the next 10 years.
Oh, shit.
Cool guy in Sturgis. And of course, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, as it got bigger, we started getting a little more organized, but still not, nowhere near where we are today.
Right.
And then probably in the 90s is when we, I'd say sometime probably in the mid 90s is when we, got it to the point where we would invite new members in. It only happened in Sturgis.
Right.
If you wanted to get into hamsters, it had to be in Sturgis. And our first foliage run out here was in 93. And we went to New Hampshire. And we all rode up to Lincoln, New Hampshire on our bikes. And it was in September. And it was like in the 50s when we left here. And nobody had trucks and trailers. And we got up there the next morning, it was like 20.
Oh.
And then it snowed.
Damn.
Gosh.
The parking lots are filled with
September?
ice.
Damn.
Yeah. And the bikes wouldn't start. And it was quite a deal. We ended up riding home. It was probably in the high 30s, riding the bikes home. So we said, well, let's try it again. So the following year we went, same trip, and it was 70 all weekend. It was beautiful.
Nice.
What?
So then the third year we went and we hit snow again. So that was it. We stopped going to New Hampshire and we moved it to the Cape. Now we had a house on the Cape, so we based it around my house and we got a little motel down the street. And that was the first year. It was probably 95, I'm going to say. That was the first year we decided to do some charity work. And so we raised like $2,000 and for the Children's Hospital in Boston. But we all went in there, a whole group of us went in there and handed the check to the doctor. This wasn't for research or anything. This was just for the kids in the wards. And so we started doing that at our fall foliage run. That was the first time that happened. And then in Sturgis, Children's Care came into place, and a guy named Bob Ellingsworth, he organized an auction at our banquet in Sturgis. Now, our banquet in Sturgis is a big deal. It's invitation only, and it's a sit-down dinner for like 700.
Wow.
And it's, everybody in the industry, is there. And so we started collecting money at the banquet, and I mean, that grew pretty quick. Right now, we'll say for the last 10 years, we do an average on a Monday night, just Monday night, we do between 300,000 and 400,000.
That's awesome.
Holy smokes.
It all goes to Children's Care.
That's
so
awesome.
cool.
The auction is unbelievable.
That's awesome.
And I do a lot of the auction, and I mean, I'm up there cracking up laughing because it's so crazy. I'm selling a little fucking hamster pin for $5,000, and when we were doing the foliage run, in the height of the foliage run, I was heavy into NASCAR. I was building a lot of bikes for NASCAR guys.
Nice.
So I'd bring, a crashed fender or a crashed door, and Mike Corbin and a couple of other guys would be bidding against each other. Mike Corbin bought a crashed door off of Dale Jr.'s car for $10,000 one time.
Damn.
But that was the kind of stuff.
Right. But that's cool, man. I mean, Joe, you ever think about that? Like these crazy guys with long hair, man, on a bunch of choppers, and now you guys are raising that kind of money to help kids, man. That's the beauty of, what you guys do and the vision that you have, man.
Yeah. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, the museum in Sturgis, the Sturgis Hall of Fame and Museum, we're really struggling. So I kind of took it on as kind of a pet project to raise money for them. So I included it in our banquet. And so that first year, I think we gave them like $20,000. And then each year after that, it's increased, and I think last year we gave them like $50,000.
Wow.
That's
great.
mean, they were like barely surviving. And then a couple of years ago, Ed Kerr kind of took on a Meals on Wheels angle.
Cool.
So we started raising money for local Meals on Wheels in Spearfish, South Dakota. Now, Spearfish is a small town, but their budget was like $6,000 for the whole year.
Damn.
To feed the elderly. So we've been giving them, probably $30,000 a year.
Wow.
For the last 2-3 years.
Game changer.
For Meals on Wheels.
Incredible, man.
So, it's all this stuff. We've given Children's Care over $5 million in the last 20 years.
Wow. That's fantastic.
So, yeah, it all works out.
Yeah. So changing gears a little bit, running a small shop with big dreams isn't easy, especially with a family, with kids and endless hours. Like you said, you hadn't ever worked a 40-hour week. They say, what we do is a passion, and once it becomes a job, it sometimes is no longer a passion. How did you keep that passion alive without burning out all these years?
Well, I've had a lot of young guys come to me and say, hey, what do I got to do? I want to do this. I want to do what you're doing and, be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you got to live the life. That's it. That's the answer. You got to live the life. You got to love what you're doing. You got to love going to work every day, no matter what's faces in front of you. We live motorcycles, everything we do is around motorcycles. And the opportunities that we've had through motorcycles, people dream about, the people we've met, the places we've been able to go and the things we've been able to do. And it's all about the passion for motorcycles.
Okay.
That's what drives it.
Absolutely. No question about that. Dave, let me ask you this, man. I know that back, when the biker build-off series, because it was a huge moment for the industry. One, it brought out more of the custom world into the television screens and rooms of the average household. But in addition to, it brought on new riders and a true appreciation, not only for the hard work that goes into building, a piece of art, but also the functionality. How did that come about for you? And what was that like behind the scenes when they came to you?
The biker build-offs were absolutely awesome. It was one of the highlights of, the industry.
Right. Absolutely.
It was, it was an opportunity, and it definitely fueled lots and lots of young people to get into an industry that they really shouldn't have quit their day job. Is really what it boils down to. When you see a bike being built in a week, on TV,
I can
me,
do that.
It doesn't happen that way. It's pretty much staged.
Absolutely.
But it was awesome. The first build off we did with Billy Lane. We rode from Florida to Texas, and they made all kinds of rules, which was total bullshit. Nobody ever went by the rules, and so we showed up at Pensacola, Florida, to start, and I brought 60 people with me.
I remember the line that was following the bikes, man. That was insane.
Yeah. We had 12 trucks and trailers from all over the country.
Oh, yeah.
I had my friends from everywhere
Damn.
that came in to ride on the run. My whole family was there.
Yeah.
Jody and my son were both riding. And it was
cool.
truly, the trip of a lifetime. It really was.
That's cool.
Just the stops that we made, the parties that were put on for us. It was great. It definitely fueled a lot. It gave a lot to the industry, but it gave a lot of false hope too. Like I say, I can't tell you how many partially built customs that I've bought over the years that guys thought they were going to go into business and build customs.
Right.
It doesn't quite work that way,
No.
Right.
Takes time, man. Absolutely.
Well, it was
Yeah.
kind of to show how much motorcycling has evolved even from that short time ago. It was it was in 2003, so 22 years ago.
Yeah.
Was myself and my aunt, who owns a Harley dealership, were the only females that were allowed to ride on that ride.
Man.
You kidding?
Per the discovery, they said no,
Jeez.
females didn't want any girls on the ride. Because we're slow, we have to go to the bathroom, we can't keep up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so if you think about it, like now, and I'm sure a lot has to do with social media, but
Sure.
females are becoming more and more dominant.
No
in the
question
industry.
about it.
Yeah.
Back then,
that must bring a lot of laughs to you, because you must be like, look at me now, mofo.
yeah.
Am I slow? Am I pulling over to pee for you?
Yeah,
so
but
it's
I
just
had to earn. I had to earn my way into
Gosh.
riding with the guys. Literally,
Right,
you know, now I hate to say that because I feel like I'm old saying that, but like back then, you know, females didn't ride like they do now. And it was
Yeah.
like, if you did, we don't want you riding with us.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
crazy.
kind of cool to see how much it's evolved
That's incredible.
now. That, you know, like
There was a
wow.
female. There
Guys.
was a female builder in that show, wasn't there? I remember. I can't
Yeah,
remember
what
her
was
name.
Yeah.
she was a
Yeah,
blonde.
Gypsy.
Gypsy. That's it. Yep.
Yeah, Gypsy was.
Was Gypsy?
She did a build off. Yeah,
I don't remember her doing
Yeah.
it. It was that blonde girl. They were a couple. Remember?
yeah. There was that. There was two.
From, like,
there was
Arizona?
Gypsy, and there was the girl from Texas.
No, I think they
I
were from
can't-
Arizona.
Well, yeah.
It was a
well, she
couple.
lives
You're
in
right.
Texas
You're
now.
right. One was a couple,
Yeah,
and
they
one
were, they
was.
were Yaffe's. They were Yaffe's
Yeah.
a guy.
Oh,
and-
no
and a
kidding.
girl.
Okay.
In fact, they were on our build off too. Actually, they drove the truck and trailer for Yaffe when we did the 2006 build off.
So the second one. Yeah. They were
Okay.
on.
Yeah, I can't think. It was Butch Mitchell.
Which
It
Mitchell?
was his
that's right.
wife.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. But I'll tell you a good story
Please.
about the 2006 build off against Paul Yaffe. We were in Iowa, and our first stop for the night was in Denison, Iowa, just a little town. And so we pull into town, and there's tons of people there to greet us, and they had a cookout for us. So me and a few of the other guys went to the local strip joint. And
Meanwhile, the
So-
whole family's still on this trip.
yeah.
Full
And,
product.
and so I come out of the strip joint. It's like 2 a.m, and I get on. Now by this time, I'm the only one there. Everybody else had left. So I get on my bike, and I jump on it, and I blow my rear sprocket apart, my belt pulley. Now this belt pulley is a one-off deal. My friend in Denver, he had made 3 of them, and I had this one, and I had a prototype also. So some guys that were out there hanging out said, well, we live right around the corner, we'll go get our trailer. So they come back, I put my bike in the trailer. I had to sit on it, they didn't have any straps. So they closed up the trailer, I had to sit on it back to the hotel. So we get to the hotel, and everybody comes out in the morning, and they see my bike broken. And so now everybody's like, oh, listen, no problem. Throw it in the truck. We'll, don't worry about it. I'm like, no way. I said, I'm fixing it. I'm not putting it in the truck. And the next stop, I forget where the next stop was. It was like 250 miles. And I said, I'll be at the next stop before you guys finish breakfast. So they said, okay. So the pack leaves, and they leave one photographer with us. And so I call my shop, and now I've got the prototype, but I don't know if it's gonna,
Right.
it's
If
never
it's the
been
right
tested.
one. Right.
I don't even know if it's finished. But there was one other one, the guy that made them. So I called my friend Leo in Denver. I said, hey, have you got that other pulley? He says, it's at the chrome shop. It's all done. I got to pick it up today. I said, listen, I need it. Can you pick it up, jump on a plane, and fly to Omaha? Because Omaha was like 2 hours away from us.
Mm-hmm.
So now one of the guys on the ride with us, one of my buddies, he calls his secretary, has her go to my shop, pick that one up. He puts her on a plane. So now both guys are the guy and the girl, they're gonna fly into Omaha at like 10 that night. So me and 2 other guys, we jump in my truck. We drive 2 hours to Omaha. We get to the airport. Now, meanwhile, it's like 100 degrees out. So the guy at the hotel, they had a conference room, and they let us put the bike in the middle of the conference room. It was air conditioned.
Nice.
So I told the guys, get it all apart. And when we get back, and we had probably 40 people with us on that one. I said, be ready at 5 a.m. We're leaving at 5 a.m. Make sure you're all gassed up, ready to go. So we get back to the hotel about 1 in the morning. We put the bike all back together. By the time we get it all back together, it's like 4 o'clock. I run back to the room. I take a shower. We're all outside at 5 a.m. We leave at 5 a.m., the whole pack. And we got to the restaurant just when they were finishing breakfast.
That's incredible. Damn.
Yeah.
That's
It was so
insane.
cold
Yeah.
that morning too. It was cold and foggy. Remember how foggy it was?
Oh, the fog was unbelievable. I mean, you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you. The fog was so heavy.
Jeez.
That is
We
a
all
great
got-
story.
Of all places to break down, we were in like this little nothing town in a Days
Right.
Inn or something like.
With nothing
little-
around. And
Yeah, like a little
Yeah.
rinky-dink hotel. We found my brother and I and we found a couple of people found a reservoir. We went swimming. We ended up going swimming for the day because we were
Nice.
all bored. There was nothing to do.
That's crazy.
That
That's
works.
crazy.
So here's a fun question for you, Dave. Out of all the builds over the years, is there one that still makes you stop and go, yeah, that one was special. That's the one.
Yeah, the last one.
The last
The
one.
last one.
That's what all the greats say. That's always the last one.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. Great answer to that. Great answer to that.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd say that.
The last one is pretty cool.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, the last bike that I built is probably got the most work of any bike I've ever built, I worked on that bike. It took me about 6-7 months to build it. And I mean, I fucking hustled, and there was so many things that I had to do.
There was a
What-
lot
what-
of things that were element too. Like
What, Jody, was it a commission bike or was it just a build that you guys wanted to put together?
No, it was one for myself.
One for yourself. Okay. Gotcha.
but like being a twin cam, being fuel injected, a lot of the carbon fiber, like
Yeah.
that's-
Yep.
Throttle by wire, and I started with, okay, this is a good story. This friend of mine tells me, he says, hey, I met a guy that's got some old frame for sale. I'm like, well, what is it? He says, I don't know, but he said that he's moving and he wants to sell it. I'm like, okay, well, where is it? He says, it's in Brockton. So me and my buddy drive to this guy's house. The guy comes out, and I know this guy, right? So I go in. It's an original Ness, a stretched Ness frame that I sold the guy in 1993, and he never used it.
Jeez.
And he still had the original bill of sale from me
That's
from
That's
93.
crazy.
insane.
Yeah. So I built my whole new bike out of that frame.
Hey guys, the show will be back in 1 minute right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, One Gang, tired of feeling like your butt's taking more of a beating than your bike on those long rides? Introducing Butt Buffer, the ultimate solution to saddle soreness. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These cushions are made from medical-grade viscoelastic polymer, scientifically crafted to eliminate pressure points and keep your circulation flowing. No more numb nuts or numb butts. And here's the best part. Butt Buffer cushions are made right here in the US for the last 30 years. From Harleys to Hondas, we've got a cushion to fit your ride perfectly. Plus, with styles ranging from sleek pebble polymer to luxurious sheepskin, there's a Butt Buffer for every rider's style. Get your Butt Buffer today at buttbuffer.com. That's buttbuffer.com. Your butt will thank you, and you'll ride longer and happier. We've got your butt covered.
That is so
Wow,
cool.
Full
man.
circle.
Yeah.
All right, Dave. So you built a name for yourself in the motorcycle world, but then here comes little Jody, not just joining the ride, but she also takes off at 200 miles an hour. So let's talk a little bit about the next generation of the Perewitzes coming in. Jody, let's kick it back to the beginning. What was it like growing up with motorcycles basically part of your DNA? Were you a kid that always was in the shop asking dad, hey, let me help you, let me do this? Take us a little bit into young Jody running around dad's shop.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, we literally grew up around motorcycles. It was second nature. It's just what we did. I have an older brother, and whatever he did, I wanted to do. And he was always good about teaching me and including me and
Nice.
everything
That's
else.
cool.
Yeah, so he we had little 50s. We had, little mini bikes and stuff. We had
Cool.
4-wheelers, and we just were always outside. Always outside. And my brother's a good wrench. So it
Mhm.
was like he was always tinkering on stuff, and we didn't have the best of anything. We just made the best of everything.
That's right.
Awesome.
So it's constantly working on different things that we were trying to ride and use and
Mhm.
everything else, like that. So it was basically my brother that taught me to ride. He had gotten a dirt bike from one of my dad's friends, and I remember him saying to me, like, "Hey, you want to ride it?" And he held it up and I got on it, and I couldn't touch the ground. And so I rode it around the yard, and I came back and like by a log pile so I could put my foot down on the
On the
log
log.
pile.
Yep.
How old are you
to
at
get-
this point?
I don't, maybe 7, 8.
Well, okay, cool.
Yeah. How old do you think when Nolan gave Jesse that dirt bike? I mean, Jesse's
Yeah, it
10,
was-
so it's probably
yeah.
8.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I mean, we had already been
Wow.
riding little mini bikes and stuff. So I mean, I don't even really remember, to be honest, the first time I was on 2 wheels, because I was so young. It was just what we did. It was, and all our friends in the neighborhood would all come to our house. Like, our house is the place to be, and
Nice.
a huge, it was a good piece of property, and it all abutted a ton of property. So we would be gone all day. Like, we would literally, our dog, it was my brother and I and our dog, and we would be gone from 8 o'clock in the morning until dark. And, I mean, I don't think my parents even thought twice about it, because it was
Right.
just what we did. But that was, that was growing up, and it was such a good childhood. Yeah. And then,
Dave, what do you remember most about little Jody when you were working in the shop? What was she like?
Well, the shop was in our, I worked at home. I had built a big garage,
Yep.
and that's where my shop was. And then I had a retail store in Brockton. But, the kids were always around, They grew up around motorcycles and motorcycle people,
Yep.
And one thing that I always looked at was the fact that they got to know the real world. They weren't sheltered
That's right.
from the real world, per se, if you know what I mean.
Of course.
I mean, I had all kinds of bikers that were friends of mine, and the kids always wanted to do stuff, whether it was dirt bikes. In the winter, they had little kitty cat snowmobiles,
Sweet.
and the kids would put 2 sleds on the back, and
Yes.
Jesse would tow Jody and my other daughter around, and it was always something. Tractors, my son always had tractors, so the kids would drive around the woods in the tractors.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So yeah, it was
It was so much fun growing up back in our day, man. We were just, I don't know. We just grew
Yeah.
up different. Like, today's youth,
Yeah.
I think, is just, it's a different times, man. That's
well,
all
it
I
is.
think.
The world is different.
The world
you
is
know,
different.
totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we would do like, my sister and I more or less we just to be out in the shop. My grandfather worked for my dad as well, and so we'd go, and like, whether we'd sit with my dad or sit with my grandfather, and we'd just be sitting out there, and like they would give us shingles and wood shingles, and we'd have to sit there and sand shingles. Like, whose shingle was smoother, and like I just found this, had this picture on my thing. So here's my sister and I
Aw,
sanding shingles.
That
That's
is
great.
killer, man.
what a
That's
great
killer.
picture.
That's a
Yeah,
great
like,
picture.
Pretty cool, but like that's what we do. Like, we didn't play video games and stuff like
That's
that.
right.
We'd stand
That's right.
shingles. So it was just to be out there and to be a part of it and to see what's going on, and just to not be sitting in the house.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Jody, that first ride on Jesse's dirt bike is such a vivid story. What was the mindset shift as you started to get older and you realized this isn't just a family business, this is who I am? You started to find your identity on two wheels.
I always liked motorcycles. And then it was actually the first like motorcycle on the street was in Daytona.
Really?
My brother and I were staying at a friend's house in a neighborhood, and I didn't even have my license yet. My brother had a Buell, and we were in the driveway, and he said to me, "Hey, you want to take my bike for a ride?" I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So I literally got on his Buell and like rode it all around the neighborhood.
Whose house was it at?
The lady in New Smyrna. Was it
Okay.
Susan? Was that her name?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was down like the road that goes towards New Smyrna. She lived right by the airport. Right before the
Okay.
airport on the right in that neighborhood. I
Okay.
remember it so vividly. But anyway.
Of course, it's your first street ride, of course.
Yeah. And like I said, like my brother was always good about teaching me and including me and everything.
That's awesome, man.
That he did. So it was always like it was just what we did. So I didn't really get into it per se until like college-ish.
Okay.
Where I had gotten a full scholarship to college. So obviously I was all about it. I was all for it. It was an academic scholarship too. And then
Nice.
like a little and just into college, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to ride motorcycles. And that made me finish college. I got my degree, and then I just started to like heavily get involved in motorcycles.
Well, how about in Sturgis? The first year that you had your driver's license in Sturgis, and you and Jesse took off for a whole day, and
Hey, take
you
us
didn't
into
know
that.
where you were.
Yeah. So the first year out in Sturgis, my brother and I would I think that first year I ended up putting like over 2,000 miles on my bike.
Damn, nice.
My brother and I were out every day, and he had already been to Sturgis, so he kind of knew
Right.
where to go, what to do, and my brother's like a walking map. He knows everything. But so we went multiple days out, but one of the days all the guys were going on this ride, and they didn't include my brother and I. We were both like, what the heck? All these guys are going here, and they never said anything. Come to find out, they didn't include us because of me, because it was that same theory of we don't want to go
my gosh.
riding with us. So it was like from then on, then on the rest of the week, my brother and I were just out and about on our own,
Nice.
riding everywhere and just soaking up the scenery and being able to have the open road and riding and just, really soaking up South Dakota.
And there's no road like out west, man. There's nothing.
No.
There's no motorcycle journey in the United States outside of out west, that area, the Dakotas, Wyoming, Montana. I mean, that's heaven.
Yeah. And I mean, we live in a populated area up here where traffic is just a given.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so listen, from ripping around the yard, shattering land speed records on a V-twin, how did that path unfold for you? How did you decide that you were going to do this?
So, in 2010, I gave my dad a trip to Bonneville for Christmas.
Okay.
And it was one of the few places that he had never been motorcycle orientated. He spent all over the world doing motorcycles and never had been to the Bonneville Salt Flats. So I gave him a trip to Bonneville, and he said, well, Jode, we can't go to Bonneville and not race. And I said, okay, I'm in. And it was literally as simple as that that got us going. And we were able to get like some really good people behind us with knowledge and good products, good companies. And I had never ridden a high horsepower motorcycle. I had never raced. We are not racers. We didn't have any history.
Right.
of it.
Cruisers. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we built bikes, he built bikes to ride, but not race. That's two totally different things. Never mind to go fast.
Right.
So we were able to get some really good knowledge that people shared with us and, schooled us on what we should build and how we should build it. And then as I started to look into the records at Bonneville, there was no female that had gone over 200 at Bonneville.
At that time. Wow.
On an American motorcycle. So
Nice.
that instantly became my goal. I wanted to be the first. There's you can set a record and then anybody can take it, but nobody can take the first. The first will always stick.
Yep, that's right.
So I wanted to be that person. And so we built a bike with the theory of going over 200, and out at Bonneville, 200 is a magical number. That is what everybody's goal is out there, whether it takes them 20 years or 10 years, however long it takes. There's so many people that are out there trying to go 200 because there's so many factors at Bonneville versus anywhere else in that you can't control, so everything has to align, everything has to work together. So we made it a point that we were going to, everything that we could control to go 200, we were going to do. So the first bike that we built, it was 100 cubic inch with a supercharger, the Pro Charger on it. And the theory is if you want to go 200, you have to have at least 200 horsepower. That bike, we ended up getting about 230 horsepower out of it.
Wow.
Well, we assumed that it had the capability, that we could push that bike. So the first year we went out to Bonneville, we were the rookies. We had never been out there. We don't have any race history. Kind of a high profile team. So the people like that, the racers and such were asking me like, "Hey, what's your goal?" And I'd say 200. They would literally laugh at me. I literally would get laughed at to the point where I stopped saying I wanted to go 200.
No shit, really?
Because it's just such a tough number. It is so tough. Out of Bonneville too, you have to make multiple passes. So you have to do, when you do a pass go in one direction and you break the record, you have to turn around and do a return pass, and it's your average to actually set a record. You have to do it within a certain time frame. So it's not just a one and done. You got to back it up. You got to do it twice, and then, like I said, it's average. So you might do it one way, but not the other way, and then you don't set a record because your average isn't that record. So that's part of why it's so difficult to set records out at Bonneville. So that first year we went out there. On the last day, I had set a record.
Tell them about the pep talk that we had to get.
Go ahead, you tell them.
So Dennis Manning, who runs the Bonneville race, who's an old friend of mine, he grabs us and says, "Hey, listen, we know you're a high-profile team and all this, but you got no experience here, and we don't want any showing off. Right. We want to make sure she knows how to ride, and, we're going to be watching, and, you got to go through the steps." And, I said, yeah, we're planning on doing that. So, you have to get a license. To race at Bonneville, you have a 125 license. So you got to go 125, and they got to make sure that they'll be watching you. And then you have to get a 150 license. Same thing. And then a 175 license. Once you get the 175 license, then it's open from there on out.
Wow. Okay.
So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. So, to kind of back it up a little bit, before we went to Bonneville, we went up to Maine there's a old Air Force base that they land speed race at. So that was actually like technically our first event. And we went up there and to practice to get a feel for the motorcycle, because previous to that I had never even ridden this motorcycle. Like I didn't have
That's
any
gotta be
experience.
nerve-wracking.
I never even had my leathers on.
Gosh.
So we went up there to race, and the morning when it started, I put my leathers on and got on this motorcycle that didn't have a fairing on it. It was open. It was what they call naked.
Yep.
And I remember I put my leathers on and I was like, oh, like these things are so cool. And I went to get on my bike, and it's kind of an awkward stance, which I don't think it's awkward now, but at the time, kind of an
First
awkward
time.
stance. And
Sure.
I went to like go and put my feet up, and I couldn't get my feet up, and I was in panic mode because I just thought, like, I'm gonna race this motorcycle. I can't even get my feet on the pit.
Whoa. Yeah.
And my dad and my crew chief Ronnie were both like, all right, you got this. We're gonna hold the bike up, get your feet up, put your feet down, get your feet up, put your feet down. So it was literally like doing something as simple as that to get a feel for the motorcycle.
For sure.
And the position that I needed to be in to get, be as aerodynamic as I possibly could on this motorcycle. And we went home from there with a record, and it's a 9-hour ride from here to Loring, Maine, which is literally the top of Maine. So it's a hike. And the whole entire ride home, myself, my dad, and Ronnie were just so ecstatic that we couldn't believe that we went 164 miles an hour and set a record. So we were pumped for Bonneville. We were.
Yeah.
And so once obviously the bike came back, this was like end of July, and Bonneville is the end of August. So we had like a little bit less than a month, and then Sturgis in between, to build this body for my bike and make it aerodynamic, because it's partial streamlined. So basically, like the top of my head, my back, a little bit of my body is exposed, but the rest I'm tucked behind a fairing. So we went out to Bonneville, and on the last day, I made a pass at 203 miles an hour. Dang. And I don't have a Speedo on my bike, so I knew that
you didn't know.
No, I knew
Dang.
that I was dancing around it, but 199 is not 200.
Right.
Right.
I didn't know like how close. I knew it was a strong run. I knew it was a good run. And the course that I race on is 11 miles long. So I use about 2.5 miles to get up to speed. They clock you entering the mile, and then they clock you exiting the mile. And then I use about 1.5 miles to slow down.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the two courses are side by side, and the big course is on the outside. So you have to go all the way to the end of the small course before you can cross over to come back to the pits.
Oh, so you're waiting that whole time, not knowing.
Yeah. So I mean, it took me probably 15 minutes to get back to the pits. But along the way, I kept seeing like people because they have different like checkpoints where they watch you go by on the course. Kept seeing people get up and like cheering for me, and I'm like,
good sign.
What's going on here? And then I see there was this lady photographer who at the beginning of the event, she wouldn't give me the time of day. She literally would not give me the time of day.
Interesting. I
see her coming towards me on the return road, and she goes by me, and she must have, which, I can't see behind me or anything. She must have whipped around, and next thing I know, she's coming up beside me, like hanging her camera out the window, taking pictures of me. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. Like what happened? And then our rule was if I broke a record, somebody would hold up a sign in our pits to tell me to go to impound, because you have to go directly to impound when you break a record so that you don't mess with your motorcycle. And then they release you and let you go back to the starting line to do a return run.
Okay.
And as I got closer to the pits, I could see there had to be 20 people standing in my pits, just jumping up and down.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so I made a run at 203 miles an hour. And, they were telling me to go to impound. And I mean, I told jump off my motorcycle. I was so ecstatic. Like right now, I'm like getting excited just talking about it.
That's so cool.
Heck yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. So I went to impound, and we were a little overzealous, and we were a little bit rookies. And we didn't cool down my bike enough, probably. And we just thought like, all right, we got to get right back out there because the winds are perfect and they changed so dramatically. And we went back out there, and I went to do a return run, and I broke a valve somewhere out.
Oh no.
So that first year we weren't able to set a record over 200. I made one pass. I still set records, but it was my goal to set a record. I wanted to be the first.
That's right.
And so it was bittersweet. It was, we did it. We had the capability of it.
Yeah.
It just gave us a little more of a push to come back with a vengeance.
Mhm.
If we did. So the following year we went back, and 9 out of my 11 passes were all over 200.
Damn.
Yeah. So I ended up, setting a record over 200. And then we raced that bike for a couple more years. And once I got all the records that I could obtain with that motorcycle, we decided that we'd build another one. So we built another motorcycle that was 120 cubic inch with a turbo. And that had about 315 horsepower. Yeah. So then we raced that one for a few years. So we raced a total of 7 years out at Bonneville.
What kind of motors were you guys running in those?
So we had they were purposely built, but it was a Jim's bottom end, and then R&R cylinders and heads. And a lot of our mechanical success, let's say, is was a lot to do with my tuner, who was Dan Thayer. He was just a guru with horsepower. Between him and then Reggie Senior and Junior from R&R, which is up in New Hampshire, that they also were a huge part in getting the horsepower and being able to get it to the ground. Because that's a big thing with Bonneville is traction. So making sure that the horsepower could literally get to the ground, because you can have all the horsepower in the world if you're real tight,
traction doesn't matter.
Yeah. And that's the thing is Bonneville's such an odd surface. I mean, it could be slick that you could run and slide, or it could be like going through sand. It changes every day, literally every day. It's
crazy.
Yeah. So, being able to make sure that horsepower is on the ground was huge. And there was many times where I would go and make a run. I'd come back, Dan would plug my bike into the computer, and he'd say to me, "Hey, did you feel the rear wheel slipping between third and fourth?" And most of the time I didn't. And we always had provisions that we could do to if traction was an issue, which one of them was we had lead weights that we built for the swing arm. If we needed to, we could put those on to hold the rear wheel down.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, the conditions of Bonneville are just unlike anywhere else.
That's cool.
In the world.
That's cool.
Yeah. So by the time we kind of, I don't want to say called it quits, but by the time we kind of were, it had run its course. At the end, like I said, I still hold 16 land speed records. And those
Gangsta.
records, just so people know, like they're not divided by male or female. All the records that I took were a male's. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was the first female in the 200 club on an American motorcycle.
Nice.
So it was such a good experience, and I didn't know it at the time. Like I look back on it with more admiration now than I did at the time because it was just what we were doing. It was our goal. It was part of our life. You know, that was that, and I never look at it too like it was dangerous. It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't. I still think that. But then I think like, all right, I was going 200 plus miles.
Yeah.
That's fast.
Yeah.
And so my fastest run, they everything's averaged, like I said. So they clock you entering, exiting, and that's your average. So my fastest run, I entered the mile at 199 and I exited the mile at 214.
Wow.
And then put that in perspective, it took 17 seconds to go 1 mile. And then to break it down even more, it is less than a second to go the length of a football field.
That's sick. Holy
so
shit. If you envision that wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
what it
it's not
felt
like,
huh?
not to take anything away from drag racing, but it's not like hit that speed and you're done. It's
Right.
maintaining it. Like
Right.
you have to stay in it.
That's
Like
right.
stay in it.
Because it's
I don't care
long.
how many the bike's wobbling, moving,
Yeah.
how bad you're getting lifted off the bike. You have to keep that throttle twisted
That's
for the
right.
whole time.
Jeez. So speaking of the dangerous element, the dangerous side of it, Dave, when your daughter hit that milestone, what went through your mind? Are you a proud dad or nervous wreck? Was it just another Perewitz doing their thing?
Well, that 200, when she broke 200, was probably one of the proudest moments of my life.
Nice.
You know, that we had all done it. I mean, it was a team effort, truly. And if you guys want to check it out, we did a YouTube video, and it's a really, really nice video. It was supposed to go to Discovery, but the two photographers that were doing it got into a pissing contest, and one of them just put it over to YouTube. But it's called Shoot the Salt. And it's about, what is it, like 30 minutes, 40 minutes?
Yeah,
We're gonna link that to the podcast too, so people can just go directly from the podcast there.
Yeah, it's really
it's
a really good video of that first year that we went out there.
All right, that's
That's
cool.
Yeah, it truly shows the real deal.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm
they did
looking
a
forward to watching
really
that.
good job capturing it. And like even when I watched that video, I think like that was pretty cool. Like I never thought that it was as cool as it was at the time because it was our goal and it was just like that's what we did. We went out to Bonneville. I mean, and we raced. I rode a 300 plus horsepower motorcycle.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sick.
didn't really
Jody-
pick anything up.
Jody, let
On a
me ask you
Tuesday.
this before we go into the next question. I want to ask you a quick. You did that a while back when you were younger, and I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying you're a little bit older than when you did it, right? Do you still have that? Like, I know, like, let me speak for myself. I'm 54, right? So when I was in my 20s, I had the Hayabusas with the nitrous and all the crazy shit that we used to do on the freeways late at night, racing at 200, close to 200 miles an hour, whatever it was. Now, at my age now, I'm cool just cruising. Like, I don't need to be going 100 miles an hour. Do you feel a little bit different now, or are you still a warrior as you were back then?
I would get on another race bike in a second.
All right.
I could go back out
That
there
answered it all, man. That answered it
Yeah.
all. All right.
I would
Let's go.
I would be gone. And when I ride my regular motorcycles, I'm not going 100 miles an hour. Like, there's a group of guys that are riding to Sturgis this year, and they all ride like ridiculously fast.
They ride hard,
They don't soak it up, and I like to soak it up.
Me
you
too,
know,
man.
and I'm not slow. Like I can ride aggressive, and I'm more aggressive than I probably should be, but I want to like when I'm going across country or I'm on a ride, like I want to soak it up. But when it comes down to being competitive, forget it. I'm in
Okay.
100%. I'm in.
You can
And
flip the
so
switch. You can flip the
yeah,
switch whenever you need it to, which is cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And like that bike, the last bike that we had, which right now it's in the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum. So if
that's
anybody
right,
wants to go,
which is
um,
cool.
that bike, the last run that I did, or the fastest run, I was only at 70% throttle.
Damn.
So that bike
Damn.
still has a lot of
That's
horsepower left.
crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just depends on the conditions. Everything
Yeah.
has to align. It's
Right.
and that was probably too why we stopped, is because we're kind of losing our team. And I can't do it without my crew chief. My crew chief can't do it without
Sure.
the bike. The bike can't do it without my tuna.
Sure.
I can't do it without my dad's support. We couldn't do it without our driver. Like,
Mhm.
it's everything has to work. Everything
That's right.
has to be together. So
All
just
right.
try to.
So now we're gonna slow it down a little bit. We had Buzz Cantor on the show, and he had mentioned the things that he did with the Cannonball runs and all these vintage bikes. Now you didn't stop at the speed. Now you went a totally opposite direction. So you took on the Cannonball and the motorcycle chase, riding 100-year-old bikes across the country. What drives you to take those endurance beasts? I mean, they're not easy to ride. I mean, anybody who's driven an old bike, how do you do these types of miles on those types of motorcycles?
I think it just goes down to I love motorcycles. I love wheels, and I eat it up. And to be honest, I hate getting my hands dirty. I don't like grease under my fingernails, but I will have paint. I will paint under my fingernails and on my hands
Okay.
almost every
Right.
day. But I feel like I have to learn the mechanics, because if anything, the more knowledge I have on motorcycles, regardless of what year it is, what it is, the better I am at business, the better I am at riding motorcycles, understanding them,
That's right.
everything.
Mhm.
So my second motorcycle is a 1963 Panhead.
Yeah,
Nice. My dad built for me, kick only, like I love that bike. I love that bike. And I rode that bike nonstop for multiple years. And so I kind of always had a thing for old bikes. And
Absolutely.
Chris Simmons, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with her, but she had been preaching to me about Cannonball. And she was like, you got to do it. You got to do it. And that was another reason, partly why we kind of stopped racing at Bonneville, is because I started to get more involved in antique bikes, in old bikes.
Right.
Mhm.
And in 2018, I got the opportunity to ride 1926 Holly across country from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon.
Oh, man.
And I knew that it was going to be a challenging thing, and it was. But I had so much fun on it and so many cool experiences, and just that's the kind of stuff that you have to experience to learn. You can't ask Surrey, you can't YouTube it.
That's
You
right.
experience this stuff yourself. And
And
old
it's
bikes,
impossible to explain it to somebody who's never done it. So
yes. And I mean, these old bikes, I just soak them up. I have been trying to make my collection older than it is newer.
Mhm.
Because I love it. They're a challenge. They're not something that somebody would even know how to start. Never mind ride.
right. That's right.
I had a couple of years ago, I had borrowed a 1912 motorcycle for a whole summer, and I rode that bike everywhere, and it was so cool and so challenging and so frustrating and so humbling. But such a cool experience,
Mhm.
to know the mechanics of it and how those bikes, and to think that like people rode those like nothing,
That's
back
right.
in the day. That
That's
was
all
your
they
motor
knew.
trade.
Yeah.
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 I have
so
to ask you, Jody, the riding, Sons of Speed, riding bikes from the early 1900s. What was your favorite part about racing history?
like in my
Riding on
experience,
historical bikes. Yeah, like what's your favorite part about that experience? Just the historical element?
Especially the Sons of Speed, because there's no brakes, right? There's no brakes, no
Right.
gears.
so that was the thrill of Sons of Speed. I went from 300 plus horsepower to about 15 horsepower.
I know, man. That's crazy.
But it's totally different because you're out there on a circle and banked track with a motorcycle with no brakes and no gears.
Mhm.
So you unhand the brakes and you want downshifting. So the only way that you're stopping is we would have a kill switch on the handlebars and it would the engine off. And then when you release the button, it would start it back up again because the momentum would
Mhm.
start it back up again.
Yep.
But if you hit that kill switch, you're never going to win a race. You're never
Yeah.
going to win.
Right.
Because these bikes, granted, we were going fast. I mean, we're still going 60, 70 miles an hour around this track. Once you kill the motor, there's not enough time to get that momentum back up again, to get back up to speed, to stay in the lead. So Sons of Speed was literally who has enough balls to stay in
That's
the corner.
right.
It's in the corners. When you flying on that straightaway, you come into that corner and realize you have no brakes. You aren't slowing down.
That's
you
right.
gotta hit that corner and you gotta use that momentum to just keep slingshotting around the track. And that's another thing where like you might not have the fastest bike, but if you're the most consistent, that's
Mhm.
where
That's what
you
you got her.
yeah. So the race that I won, I purely won out of consistency. I did not have the fastest bike, but I stayed wide open the whole track and
The
did
most
not
courage. The
let
craziest.
off. Yeah, because I wanted that win, and that's where the competitive
That's
side.
pretty amazing, man. That was pretty
It
cool.
really is.
That was
Yeah,
pretty
and
cool.
bikes are no suspension. And I don't know if you guys have ever even just walked New Smyrna Speedway, but it is not smooth.
No. That's a rough
So I mean,
surface all the way
you're
around.
staying as tucked in as little as you can and still being able to keep it wide open and hang those corners.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the thrill of those races.
That's cool.
Mhm.
That's cool.
It's
Insane.
different but the same.
Yeah.
All right.
That
So we touched a little bit on both of you guys. Now let's get into individual. Let's get into the togetherness part of the father and son, father and daughter connection here. So you guys work together daily, like a dynamic duo. And how do you balance business, the bills, the family bond without killing each other?
Well, Jody, go ahead.
How does that work? Because if I work with my dad, I would shoot myself. But there's different aspects, and I love my dad. He's going to be 90 this year.
I mean, honestly, my dad's my best friend. So, I mean, we share the same passion. I'm constantly trying to learn and, soak up motorcycles as much as we can. And I think that, just having the same passion is huge. I mean, we're
Sure.
not millionaires and I'm okay with that. I love what I do and I get opportunities that money couldn't buy, and because people around me that are more fortunate monetary wise they see that and they give me opportunities and stuff like that. Like I wouldn't trade that for money, and I think that's my dad's obviously who has taught me that. And yeah, we're very fortunate in what we do and the things that we have. But we
Joe,
come to work
is dad patient? Is he patient?
75% of the time.
All right,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's a pretty
He's
for a
between my
guy.
time-
For a guy,
Yeah.
at 75%, dude, you're pretty damn good.
Yeah, he is. He's a good teacher.
All right.
Um,
All right.
What about Jody? Dave, what about Jody?
No, she's patient. Is that
She-
what you're asking?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
she patient?
Is she good to work with? Can you understand how to get, when to hit the switch and when not to with her?
Yeah, no, it really works out really well because she's in that younger generation, which I'm lost with.
Yeah, me too.
You know, years ago, I always knew everyone in the industry. You know what I mean? I knew every guy that made products and every guy that ran companies, and now everything's changed, and now Jody knows that whole lower echelon of age group that I don't know.
Right.
You know,
The next generation.
right, and so that really helps, and you know, we both have our own thing. You know, Jody does a lot of helmets, and she does cups, and she does some bikes, and I do basically all the rest. And Jody takes care of most all of the promotional stuff, which we have a lot
A
of.
lot of, yep.
You know, and I mean, this is a very, very tough business to make money at. believe
Absolutely,
me.
man.
And, you know, if we didn't have all the side deals going that we have with promotional stuff and endorsements and, you know, sponsors, we couldn't, you know, we couldn't survive. But it's because of how long we've been doing it and, you know, the reputation that we've made over the years that has luckily followed us. And you know, and I don't have deadlines. We don't try not to put deadlines on paint jobs and
Right.
bikes we build. But at the same time, when it comes to paint jobs, we get them out.
That's right.
Guys that want us to paint, you know, when we paint bikes for guys all over the country, and we never hold anybody up for any length of time. Somebody wants a bike built, no problem. I put you on the list, but you know, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. You know, right now we probably have a year backlog.
Yeah, that's a good
On
good
bikes.
problem.
Yeah, but and then I only build stuff I want to build.
That's right.
You know, I don't build any big wheel baggers. I try not to do any bagger stuff, to be honest with you. We're building cool shit that we like doing.
Cool customs, yep.
Yeah. And, you know, we come across a lot of deals. So, you know, people will call us, you know, I mean, I've bought lots and lots of my old bikes back, you know, and, you know, flipped a lot of them, kept some of them. You know, Jody's got more bikes than I do, you know, she doesn't believe on selling anything, you know, she wants to keep buying them and not sell them and not sell any of them.
Yeah, man,
But
it's an addiction, man. It's you know,
Yeah.
some people do drugs, some people drink all day. You know, we love motorcycles. I'm the same way. I've got eight bikes in my barn. I just don't want to get rid of them. I love them.
Well, at Perewitz
Yeah.
Cycle Fab, we don't have a 401k.
That's exactly right.
So there you go.
That's exactly
There's a good
right.
reason.
Yeah.
It's one of the things.
Here's
one
a-
of the things that we talk about as small businesses in this industry is because we're such a passion-driven business. So unless you have some humongous parts company in back of you that's making all the production money, if you're just custom building, painting, I mean, you're grinding every day. There is no 401ks. There is no, you know, vacations planned around the clock. It's when you get a chance, that's when you can escape. But other than that, you're working and grinding. So I get it.
Yeah, and you know, it's like we travel a lot, a real lot, and 90% of the trips we're going on together. So, you know, it works out really well.
Yeah. Here's a fun question for both of you, and you might have the same answer, but Jody, we'll start with you. Is there a father-daughter project that really stands out to you that is the most memorable and makes you the most proud?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, my dad helps me with everything. So, every project, every bike that I have, it's, my dad's had a hand in it. One of the bikes that I
Mhm.
have is a 1950 Panhead. And
Nice.
it's a bobber chopper kind of bike. Um,
Sweet.
and it was his bike originally, and somebody made him an offer that he couldn't refuse in Daytona, and he sold it, probably 15 years ago.
Of course.
And unfortunately, that guy passed away, and their estate called us, said, "Do you want to buy this back?" Um, and I made him an offer, and they said, "No, we're going to put it in an estate sale, and if it doesn't sell, we'll sell it to you." Fortunately, it didn't sell. So I went and bought it, and I actually already had it sold to flip it. And
Huh.
when I got there, it was in Virginia. And so I drove
Mhm.
down to Virginia and went to pick it up. And I was like, you know what? I'll never lose money in this.
That's
This
right.
was my dad's bike originally.
That's
This
right.
bike is timeless. It's so cool. I love the
That's right.
old bikes. So I was like
Me too.
having to convince my dad that I'm gonna keep it with my own money, but
Yeah.
I said exactly that to my dad. And I was like, I don't want to sell it. I want to keep this bike. And he was like, all right,
Mhm.
yeah, you're right. You're right. So you should just keep it. And so I ride that bike a ton. I love that bike. That bike, I will never sell that bike because it's cool because it was his originally. He built it.
That's
Yeah.
right. Of course. Of course.
It's timeless. It's cool. I'll never
Mhm.
sell that bike. So even though I
Yeah.
didn't have a hand in building it because that was kind of before my day, um, it's still that's a bike, or you could say
Specialty.
project, that I'll
Yeah.
never sell.
Dave, what about you? Do you have a memorable
Well,
project?
I would say the race bike,
Yeah,
Cool.
my
Which
dad-
one?
the Bonneville bike.
Yeah,
That was, that was an unbelievable project. That was completely out of our wheelhouse. And fortunately, I have some good friends that are experts at all the different aspects of that bike. I would call Phil Day from Daytech. He designed the frame, told me what the proper wheelbase should be, and so on. And he built the frame. And then, of course, Dan Thayer guided us completely, with the engine and the fuel injection and everything. And then Bert Baker, helped us with the transmission. And Jim's, of course, Jim's did the the motor,
Yep.
the bottom end, the cases and the bottom end all came from Jim's. And so, I was on the phone for 3 months when we started building that bike after Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Dealer Show. And so we actually built that bike in 3 or 4 months. And I was on the phone every single day, talking to people,
Right.
gathering information.
Yeah. You using all your resources and all the people that you know. Yep.
we had the most
Right.
man hours, the most labor in that motorcycle than we ever have in any motorcycle by far,
Wow.
like by a
Makes
lot.
sense.
Yeah. And that
Jeez.
bike
Yep.
too, like when we went to mount the body, I was every day sitting on that bike and making sure that the brackets weren't in where my feet were, that my elbows could stay tucked. Just
Mhm.
fitting it the long way, that it was tucked, that it was coming down as close to my butt as it could be.
Right.
So it was like every day I was sitting on that bike to make sure it fit me.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that
Yeah,
was,
it was almost as I say it was almost as much work to mount the body as it was to build the whole bike. I mean,
Gosh.
to make all the bracing and all the Zeus fasteners, and oh my God, that was so much work.
Jody, you said that you don't do this for the fame. You do it because you love motorcycles. What still excites you every time you fire up a bike or plan your next race or do your next trip? What is it in you that just drives you with this?
That's a good question. I love motorcycles, and I love to see things that are different. And they don't have to be like straight out custom or what, that it could be like, so this past weekend I was in Arizona Bike Week, and one of my friends let me ride. He had a new ST, a Softail ST,
Yep.
and it had has a turbo on it.
Yeah.
And it's just a stock bike, like it's got an exhaust or turbo,
Right.
like, it's got minimal stuff to it. But I was like, man, this bike is so cool, because it was just like that instant power
Right.
of
Yeah,
a Trask turbo. So it's like something like that is that excite me. And then one of my friends, Bob, who he's the one that basically has been schooling me and teaching me all about old bikes. He's taught me how to ride them, everything. He'll come over here on a 58 Panhead that he just restored, and like I see it,
Sweet.
I'm like, man, this bike is so cool.
Right.
That's awesome.
Seeing a cool original paint knucklehead, poof, like, that's
Yeah.
like the cream of the crop to me. So I love motorcycles. I love two wheels, whether it's whether it's old, it's new, it's just, something that's different, something that's cool. I just soak it up.
Mhm.
I'm great. I'm with you 100%.
Dave, watching Jody carve her own lane out while still carrying the Perewitz name, what's that legacy mean to you now after all these years?
Well, it's kind of like the master plan, for Jody to be able to, stand on her own without me, which is, happening.
Mhm.
Now I'm Jody Perewitz's dad. She isn't Dave Perewitz's daughter.
So awesome. Hey, who's that guy with Jody?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
It's, realistically, that was always the goal, is to bring Jody into it so she wouldn't have to rely on me.
Yeah.
And,
hopefully
she
you
knows
can rely
enough
on me.
people. Yeah. Well, I do have to rely on her,
Mm. That's crazy.
Definitely works both ways. Hey, first of all, congrats to both of you being inducted into the Sturgis Hall of Fame. Are you the only daughter-father tandem in there?
Yeah.
You are. All
Yeah,
right.
we are.
That's so cool. How is that for you guys? I mean, to like go into that museum, that's got to be pretty freaking cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, very cool. And Jody was the youngest person to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, the Hall of Fame is really such a cool deal. I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in I think 2000.
Yeah.
Into the Sturgis Hall of Fame. I'm in 4 Halls of Fame altogether.
No big deal.
Yeah.
It's a good thing you didn't do. It's a good thing you didn't do much in this industry over this lifetime. Huh?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And I really like being able to teach somebody the aspects of what we're doing, whether it's painting or building bikes or fab work or whatever.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there's not many people that have come around over the years that really wanted to learn. So it's, it's cool.
Mhm. So I'm going to ask you both this question. I'll start with Jody. What's one thing you've learned from your dad that's changed the way you ride or wrench or just plain old live life?
Painting.
Painting.
That's yeah. I love being artistic. And I fortunately and unfortunately have been huffing paint since I was born. I just didn't really know it. So I mean, that's just something that he's taught me, and I can carry that on, and that I can make money at that. I mean, racing is great, and I love it. I would never take anything back, but we don't make money at it. You don't
Mhm.
you don't win money.
Yeah.
There's no money to be made. Whereas painting, I make a living off of
That's
that.
cool.
So
Very
I
cool.
would say that's the number one thing.
Gotcha. And Dave, what's something that you've learned from Jody?
Patience.
What's that?
Patience.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. Yeah, actually, patience is, a factor. Sometimes I get a little too aggressive, and Jody says, "Dad, calm down about it."
It's good. It's good to
That's
have
your
a
level.
calming voice in the shop, because if not, you're so driven to get things done, go full speed. So that's cool. All right, last question before we get into the speed round, but I guess this will be. I'll ask each one. I'm going to ask with Dad first because he started it, and then we'll go to you, Jody. When people hear Perewitz 50 years from now, what do you hope that name stands for in the world of motorcycles?
Custom bikes, custom paint, flames, basically.
Okay,
Nice.
Jody.
What a cool father-daughter duo.
Seriously.
Killer. All right, that's cool, man. All right, well,
Yeah,
hey,
so-
listen. Hey, go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna say we'll link up the YouTube, the Shoot the Sand YouTube video. Where else are you guys most
No,
active?
shoot the salt.
Shoot the salt. My bad. I already wrote it down. I just said it wrong. So
Okay.
we'll link that up. And where are you guys most active? If I wanted to stay engaged with you guys, where would be the best place to follow along on the journey?
Instagram.
Instagram. All right, cool.
Dave, I see you're crazy active on Instagram and TikTok. You still doing your dance videos? Man, I don't get all that stuff. I know in today's world we have to be on it, but it drives me crazy. It's too much.
It does me too.
It's a lot.
You
It's
know,
a lot.
I mean, we've got lots and lots of people on Facebook,
Yeah.
and I have people come up to me all the time at events saying, "Oh yeah, I'm on your Facebook with you. Do you remember I sent you a message?" And, the sad truth is I don't go on Facebook. It's all Jody. Everybody thinks they're talking to me, but they're really talking to Jody.
Jody's behind the knee. All right. We won't tell anybody. All right, guys. So here's what we'll do. We got a 15 question speed round. All right. Here's the deal. If you guys make it in 2 minutes, we will, I don't know, we'll send you a gift certificate to your favorite place. If you don't make the 2 minutes, you guys sign an autographed picture of the two of you to Surgeon Ben, and you send it to us so we can proudly hang it in our office. Is that cool?
In our Hall of Fame.
Well,
Well, we'll do that anyway.
All right.
All right.
We'll do that for you anyway.
All right. Awesome.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's do it. I'll start with the ladies first. So Jody, will go from you to your dad. Okay. Who's
Okay.
more likely to be late to the shop, Dave or Jody?
DP.
Boy, good question.
Hey, what about you, DP? She's blaming you.
And she's
Yeah,
smiling.
Jody.
Jody. All right. All right, Jody. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Johnny Cash.
Cool.
Catch. What about you,
Alan Ness.
Alan? Oh, that's great, man. Great,
Man, that's
great
great.
answer. All right, Jody. Biggest maintenance mistake most riders make and need to be better at.
Checking the air in their tires.
I agree with you 100%. Dave,
Same thing.
same
Checking the air in
thing.
the
Yeah,
tires.
number one. I always say that too. All right.
Yeah.
Which of you is more likely to get grease on a clean shirt 5 minutes before a meeting?
GP.
Me.
All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. One must-do ride on your bucket list, Jody.
Alaska.
Oh, nice. Dave?
California to Sturgis.
California to Sturgis. Okay. Jody, biggest pet peeve that absolutely makes you lose it.
Social media.
Good answer.
I know. I love that. I love it. What about you, Dave? Biggest pet peeve that absolutely
Fake people.
fake people. Good one. All right. Jody, guilty alcoholic beverage, and if you don't drink, go to snack.
I don't drink. I would say Fritos.
Fritos. Okay.
Nice.
Dave, do you have a guilty alcoholic beverage?
No.
Okay. What about
No, cheese curls.
cheese
Cheese
curls?
curls.
Cheese
All right.
curls,
All right,
nice.
cheese curls.
Classic shop
All right.
snack.
Yeah.
Jody, best advice you ever received that even now applies to your life.
The best artists can always fix their mistakes.
Okay. Dave?
Learning how to fix your mistakes is part of being an artist.
Okay. Next.
That compliments so well. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was cool. All right. Jody, if you weren't doing anything motorcycle related, what would be your dream job?
To be a boat captain.
Cool. Dave?
Landscaping.
All right. Landscaping. Okay. That was it. All right. Cool.
That's my hobby.
Can you tell
That's
what
nice.
we
That's
do?
your hobby?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You know,
can. I can.
Pruning trees.
You have a lot of acreage around you where you live?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Jody, if you could travel to any era, where are you going and why?
I would go to the 50s. Because I think that those motorcycles, knuckleheads, handheads, that era is so cool. And I would be a cool chick in the 50s because I would be
Hell
riding
yeah.
when no chick really rode.
Dude,
That's
you'd be
right.
like Pinky Tuscadero, man.
Yeah.
Except faster and better. So go ahead, Dave. What about you? Any era and why?
60s.
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 Okay. The hot
Yeah.
rod?
Just, yeah, hot rods, the bikes, everything.
Okay.
Mhm. That
What's one thing you completely disagree on when it comes to anything bikes? Jody.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. We don't really disagree on motorcycles.
Okay, Dave?
Are you saying the two of us disagree on?
Like, well, what is one thing that you guys disagree on when it comes to motorcycles? You know, like some people, like you said, you're not a big wheel guy. I'm not a big wheel guy, motorcycle guy either. So, like, is there anything that, like, you love that you go like, yeah, if not, then not.
He likes to use more
Yeah.
colors than I do. He likes to mix all colors. When I
Right.
say use black, he hates to use black.
He's the king of flames, man. Come on. Like black, he needs that beautiful brightness in there. Man. All right.
Yeah, right.
Besides the One Gang Worldwide podcast, do you guys listen to any other podcasts in your spare time?
I listen
I don't.
to Joe Rogan a ton.
Yeah, me too.
cool.
Yeah.
Dave, no?
I listen to George Christie.
George Christie. Okay. The Hell's Angels, the ex-Hell's Angels guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You watch out
Yeah.
YouTube, Dad?
I watch it all the time.
Yeah, on YouTube.
Yeah.
On YouTube, yeah. He's got that. All right. If you guys got a deadline to meet at the shop, what's one band that's playing on your stereo?
Blues.
Van Morrison.
Love blues.
Nice.
Okay, Van Morrison.
Good
Okay,
answers.
cool.
Yeah.
If a movie was made,
Chris Stapleton.
Chris Stapleton's good. Yeah. If a movie was made
Mhm.
about the Perewitz family legacy, who's playing each of you?
Oh, jeez.
Somebody pretty.
Okay. I see like
Shit.
with Jody, I see more of like what's her name? Sandra Bullock type. Like
I was gonna say Sandra Bullock, but she's older than me.
I'm not
Right.
saying you. I'm not saying the age thing. I'm saying like a cool chick.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I would
Yeah.
be okay with Sandra Bullock.
All right. Dave, what about you?
Well, one problem I have is I never remember actors' names.
Gotcha.
You know.
Do you remember movies?
I could watch a great movie last night, and I'd have a hard time remembering the name of it today.
That's all right. We're blaming it on the movie, not the age.
Yeah,
So
but
that's
he
what
remembers
that's the
that
point.
guy. He remembers the guy in 1974 who bought a motorcycle off $500.
Hey, that was business. That was love, of course. All right, good. All right, Jody, finish this sentence. When I'm on the bike,
I'm smiling.
Dave. When I'm on the bike,
I'm listening to every sound that the bike is making.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what makes sense.
Awesome. Hey, to you both, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for coming on the show,
Yep.
taking the time. This has been like, I've been chasing Jody. I've been chasing you down for 2 years. So this to me is like a blessing just to get to know Dave a little bit off on this thing and yourself. Thank you guys so much for taking the time and coming on board here and joining our show and telling your stories, man. This is just absolutely awesome. We're huge fans of yours and wish you nothing but success going forward to continue this amazing journey that Dave started and you both are carrying on now.
Well, listen, I enjoyed talking to you guys, and if you want to do it again, I've got lots and lots of stories.
Yes.
Man,
So,
are you?
just give me a heads up.
I will tell my wife I'm
I'll
going
do
on
it again.
vacation for 2 weeks just to listen to your stories.
Yeah.
So for
Story
sure,
time
man.
with
know,
DP.
Sometimes I'll start telling stories to people, and I'll think to myself, I wonder if they think I'm full of shit.
No,
It's a good story
any
then.
any motorcycle rider who goes on actual trips and journeys, there's so many stories that when you share with regular people, they have no idea. They don't know what it means because they've never really experienced it. So the stories from the road are the greatest stories ever told. So it's beautiful that you started it.
Yeah.
You started it. You're still continuing it, and now you've got this amazing young woman with you, who's just carrying this torch with this big smile on her face, and just like I watch her do her stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, man. It just puts me in a good mood that when you tell people about like how much you love this industry and how much what it's the only industry that truly just makes you feel like there's nothing around that could ever hurt you, and then like I watch her do it, and I'm like, man, this is just awesome to see from one generation to the
Really
next.
is.
So keep carrying the torch, Joe. You're doing an amazing
Thank
job.
you. Well, for sure.
All right. Awesome,
Yep.
guys. Thank you so much and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you guys for having us.
Okay. Hey, thanks again, guys.
Thank you, DP. Thank you, Jody. We're going to be on cloud 9 for the rest of the day. Our inner
Hells
children
yeah,
have been
man.
screaming
I
this whole
can't wait to
time.
tell the story. My wife's already texted me. I'm getting texts. How did it go? She knows I'm a huge fan of you guys. So,
Yeah.
she's texting
Yeah.
me. She's going like, how? Because I've been all night, man. I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I'm like, I wonder if I'm covering all the questions that I need to ask. So I brought out my questions and I'm looking at it. I'm like, she's like, you're retarded. Go back to bed, will you? So I'm like, I was just happy to get it. So thank you so much, guys. I look forward to seeing you guys at the next event. Are you coming to Biketoberfest?
I'm not sure. Probably not. But I never know.
Sturgis is the next
never
big one
know.
for you two, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, no. We're going to Myrtle Beach.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
We've got a paint show in Myrtle Beach. And then I think I'm going to do the event in Pennsylvania at where's that event in Pennsylvania, Joe?
Are you talking about the Big Pines Run?
Yeah,
I don't know when that is. I think it might fall on Laconia, isn't it?
it's the week after Laconia.
So the week after
Yeah.
Laconia is late this year.
Jesse,
Yeah.
you got a busy travel week. Then you got Laconia, then PA.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
we will
but-
be coming, or I will be coming to Biketoberfest, unfortunately, because I'm on the FXR tour this year.
Okay,
So-
cool.
Ends at Born Free, Texas, and it's the same weekend.
Oh,
as
same weekend. Okay.
Biketoberfest. Yeah, so
Biketoberfest. Okay.
which is pretty cool because I'm the first only female to do that
Nice.
tour. So
Killer.
which we need to get going on my bike and make some decisions, but
Yeah.
we will.
Which one do you have a skeleton now, or are you doing
Oh,
something
I
to your?
I have a stock FXR in my garage
Yeah.
that's been just sitting there.
What year?
I think it's either an 86 or an 88.
Nice.
No, it's
Cool.
an 86, I think.
86.
Oh, no, it might be a little later.
Yeah, I always
Yeah.
get that one and the one that I sold mixed up. But anyway, it's one of the bikes that my dad's been hounding me to sell. So now I have an excuse.
Yeah, you have
not-
a reason
Yeah.
to keep it.
Yeah. So
Congrats.
so we're gonna redo it, make it cool, and you got to ride it 1,000 miles, to Born Free.
The Born
and
Free
then
in Texas.
you're-
All right, cool.
You're a display. So
And
I'm
I
pretty
love that.
excited.
I love that you document everything you do. So us groupies
I
get to
do.
follow this
Yeah.
along and check it out.
It's tough because I'm not a social media person. I
I know.
despise it. I really do, because I hate to say it, but sometimes it discourages me because people are so fake. They're so
Yep.
fake on it. And
Big
I have so much content. I have so
Mhm.
much cool stuff that I have recorded in the shop, like DP recording him doing stuff.
Right.
It's so hard to keep up with it and
Yeah,
keep
it's
posting.
super hard, man.
Yeah.
These big budget production people, they have these teams that do all this shit. But we're
Right.
like, we're all grinders, so like we're working.
Yeah.
So whatever, it's hard to stay on top of that all day long. I mean, number one, I'd blow my brains out if I had to do it all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, good
Well,
luck to you
so
guys on the
listen-
shows. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, it was good talking to you guys.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
You as well. Thank you,
All right.
guys.
Okay, I'll talk to you again soon,
All right,
hopefully.
you got
Yes,
it.
please.
Thank you.